Hey everyone, it's February 5th, 2025, and we've got some big time weather on the horizon. There's a lot happening right now, so buckle up because today we're diving into a pretty serious ice storm that's going to impact parts of the Ohio Valley as well as the mid Atlantic regions. And while that's going on, we've also got severe weather to talk about, including the possibility of isolated tornadoes in the mid South. I'm going to walk you through everything you need to know so you can stay ahead of these storms. To start by talking about the setup for this storm. So what's driving all this crazy weather? Well, it starts with the jet stream, which is stretched across the United States right now. Picture it like a giant river in the atmosphere guiding all the weather systems. Right now, it's steering a massive atmospheric river into the Pacific Northwest. All this moisture from the Pacific is getting slammed up into the Cascades and the Sierra Mountains. And what does that mean? Well, flooding, snow, and all sorts of problems. You can see it on the current hazards page from the National Weather Service. Winter storm warnings are popping up all over Montana, Idaho, parts of Washington, Oregon, and California. The Sierra Mountains are going to get slammed with heavy snow, and there's also a ton of rain expected in the valleys, which brings the potential for flash floods and even mudslides. It's a mess out there. But before we get into the details, hit the subscribe button, like this video, and leave your thoughts in the comments. Thank you for your support. But what's really interesting is what happens when all this energy in the jet stream shifts toward the eastern US. That's where things get complicated and where the potential for severe weather really ramps up. Now, before the bulk of this energy reaches the East Coast, we've got something called a shortwave true moving in. This is essentially a little dip in the overall flow of the atmosphere, and it's going to be our troublemaker for the next couple of days, particularly in the Midwest, Ohio Valley, and Mid-South. So what's happening with this trough? Well, right now there's cold air coming down from Canada, and it's getting trapped in the Appalachian region. At the same time, warm air is trying to push up from the south. If you've been outside lately, you know what I'm talking about. Temperatures have been unseasonably warm. It was 60 degrees here in eastern Kentucky this morning, and honestly, it feels like spring, a far cry from the deep freeze we were dealing with just last week. However, that warm air is going to try to pushing northward, but it's going to get blocked by the cold air trap behind the mountains. This creates a pretty volatile situation, especially for places like Virginia, West Virginia, and Pennsylvania. As the warm air meets that cold air, combined with the storm system coming in, we're looking at the possibility of a pretty significant ice storm. Let's break this down further, starting with what might happen at the surface. You can see here how all the moisture is coming out of the Rockies and pushing across the Intermountain West. By Wednesday, we're going to see things really starting to come together across the Midwest and Ohio Valley. What's going to start off as some rain and sleet in places like Chicago, Indianapolis, and Columbus, Ohio, will quickly turn into a major icing event. We're talking about significant ice accumulation, particularly by Thursday morning. If you're in Pittsburgh, Hagerstown, or even Northern Virginia, this is going to be a rough morning. Temperatures are going to drop and all that rain is going to freeze on contact, creating hazardous driving conditions and potential power outages. If you're further north, like Cleveland, New Jersey, or upstate New York, it's still looking like this. This will be mostly a snow event, but the ice will be more of a problem as you head south into the Appalachians. How much ice are we talking? Well, we're still a little too early to pinpoint exact totals, but if you're in the pink zone on the map, you should definitely be prepared for at least a glaze of ice. That can make roads super treacherous, especially as we head into Wednesday night and Thursday morning. Even if the roads look fine, the ice can sneak up on you, especially on bridges and overpasses where black ice is a major concern. In the darker pink zones, we could see anywhere from a quarter inch to half an inch of ice, especially as we head into Thursday. That's when the biggest concerns arise, slick roads, power outages, and just a general mess across the region. If you're in the panhandles of Maryland and West Virginia or Northern Virginia, expect some serious issues. There's a good chance we'll see travel disruptions, especially in the higher elevations. The good news is that there's at least an 80 chance of minor impacts in places like Pennsylvania and Maryland, and even Ohio, Indiana, and Michigan might see some slick roads. Detroit, you guys are right in the middle of this with a 30-50 chance of some minor impacts from the ice. If you're in these areas, be ready for a rough commute on Thursday morning. And remember, it's always better to stay off the roads if you can, or at least wait until they've been cleared. But That's not all we got to talk about today. We've also got severe weather on the table. That's right. February 5th is bringing a marginal risk of severe storms to parts of the Mid-South. We're talking about a 2 chance of tornadoes, which, while not huge, is still something to watch closely. It's been a while since we've seen a decent chance for tornadoes this far north. So cities like Nashville, Bowling Green, and Memphis need to stay alert. There's a small but non-zero chance that some of these storms could rotate and spawn a tornado. Let's take a look at the radar for the coming days. All that moisture streaming in from the Pacific is going to meet up with that shortwave trough where I mentioned earlier. The result, a whole lot of instability, which is going to set the stage for severe storms, especially on Wednesday. Per 5RNM, we could see storms developing from the Howell-Rogers Parkway down to Bowling Green and Nashville, possibly even extending to Memphis. These storms could bring small hail, gusty winds, and yes, even a tornado or two. Looking at the forecast soundings, we're seeing rotation in the atmosphere, meaning there's potential for some twisting up higher in the storm, which increases the risk for tornadoes. This is definitely something to watch, but it's not looking like a major tornado outbreak by any means. Still, it's always better to be prepared than surprised. As we get into the middle of February, the real excitement begins. We're looking at an Arctic blast that's going to sweep down from Canada. The European weather models are showing that the worst of this cold could impact the Northeast. If you live in this area, be prepared for more snow and frigid temperatures in the weeks to come. February is notorious for big winter storms, and I think it's very likely we'll see at least one, if not two, major snow events as we head into mid-February. So make sure to stay tuned because it's going to be an active couple of weeks. Now, when it comes to ice from this storm, we're expecting some significant ice accumulation, especially Wednesday into Thursday. There's a large area that will likely see a glazing of ice, and untreated roadways could be extremely dangerous. The risk for power outages is also quite high, particularly in areas marked in darker purple on the forecast maps, where ice accumulation could be as much as half an inch in some places. This would definitely lead to more power outages, and I think this could end up being a pretty significant ice storm, especially for the Northeast. A lot of areas will see at least 1/10 of an inch of ice. And in some areas, like central Pennsylvania, we could see half an inch of ice accumulation, which would make the situation even worse. Now, let's talk about second winter storm, which is expected to hit Saturday and Sunday. This could end up being more significant in terms of snowfall, especially in the upper Midwest. Again, we're not going into exact snow totals yet, but I'll tell you that this storm looks like it could bring a lot more snow than the current one. It's one to watch closely, especially if you're in the upper Midwest or the Northeast. For the Northeast, Thursday and Friday, we'll see widespread snow, with most areas expecting 3 to 6 inches, and the second storm could dump an additional 4 to 8 inches. In terms of overall snow for the next couple of weeks, the European models are showing a high probability of snowfall, especially in the Northeast. There's still some uncertainty about the exact locations of snowfall, but it's looking very likely that we'll see at least 1 or 2 major snowstorms between now and mid-February. The areas that are most likely to see significant snow include the Northeast, the Pacific Northwest, and the Sierra Nevada. So if you live in these areas, stay alert and keep an eye on the forecast. But it's not all about snow. There's also going to be some extreme heat. The Southern Plains and Southeast are looking at a massive heat wave with temperatures that will be well above average. Even areas that typically see colder weather, like the Ohio Valley, will experience unseasonably warm temperatures. In fact, many places in the Deep South and Southeast will see temperatures soaring into the 70s, which is way above what's normal for this time of year. Texas, Virginia, North Carolina. These areas are going to feel like summer. We're expecting record-breaking highs on Thursday, and Thursday is going to be the hottest day of the week by far. So if you're in these areas, get ready for a warm day. As we head into the weekend, that heat will continue to push eastward. By early next week, though, the heat will start to subside, and we'll be looking at some cold air moving in. We'll likely see several cold blasts over the next couple of weeks, with the first one arriving right around the middle of next week. That's when we'll start to see the Arctic blast moving into the Midwest and Great Plains. At the exact timing of this cold front is still up in the air, but it's definitely something to keep an eye on. And after this cold blast, we'll likely see another shot of Arctic air later in the month. So the weather is going to stay active for a while. Over the next few days, we'll continue to break records. Today, we're already seeing temperatures that are way above normal for February, with Texas hitting the 70s instead of the typical 50s. Places like Virginia and North Carolina are also going to see temperatures in the 70s, so it's definitely going to feel like spring in some parts of the country. Thursday, though, is when the record-breaking heat will peak, with areas from Texas to the southeast all breaking records. By Friday, the heat will shift to Florida, and by the weekend, we'll see even more record-breaking highs. Thanks so much for watching. If you found this helpful, make sure to hit the like button down below and subscribe to stay updated on all these crazy weather events. The next few weeks are going to be wild, so make sure you're prepared.